Sorry about that. All right, so I will repeat. Today we're gonna look at just a real quick look at what Shavuot is, what it says in the text, and how we observe it and when we observe it, and then we're gonna read some passages. So let's take a look here. Why are we here at Shavuot? That was the wrong clicker. There we go. The main reason we're here is we're commanded to be here. We're commanded to celebrate this. Leviticus 23, 1-4 says, "And Yahweh spoke again to Moses, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, The appointed times of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim as holy convocations. My appointed times are these. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your places of habitation. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at the times appointed for them." He seems pretty clear about this, that these are the times that we are supposed to gather as a set-apart gathering, the holy convocation. We're supposed to gather together and keep this day set apart. Remember, if you remember in the text, the first feast day that it talks about is the weekly Sabbath. So it is a feast day. It is an appointed time of the Father. And that's the other thing that I always like to point out, because it was pointed out to me early on, and it really makes sense. These aren't Israel's appointed times. These aren't Judah's appointed times. These aren't Moses' appointed times. These are Yahweh, the Most High's appointed times. And because of that, as it says in there, that this is a perpetual statute. Like, all of your days you were supposed to celebrate and observe these. And we're supposed to do it at the times appointed for them. That means we don't just get to pick a day and go, today we're going to do Shavuot. Today we're going to do Sukkot. I feel like going camping. Sukkot this week. Here we go. We don't get to do that, because that's not what the Father says. These are his times. So we're joining in with his times. Part of the command, not just for the feast days, it then talks about the specific feast day that we're in. And it says in Leviticus 23:21, "On the same day you shall make a proclamation as well. It shall be a holy convocation to you. You shall do no laborious work. It is to be a perpetual statute in all your places of habitation throughout your generations. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall be careful to observe these statutes." And then in Jubilee 6, it says, "For I have written in the book of the first law, in that which I have written for thee, that thou shouldst celebrate in its season 1 day in the year." So this celebration is for 1 day, a specific day throughout the year, and it's supposed to be throughout all the generations. So oftentimes, before we've come to this understanding, the idea that that these are old things, we don't need to celebrate this anymore. But if you're walking after the Father, if you are walking in the ways of the Most High, he commands you to observe these days. And what a great thing that is. So it also says that you should observe these days on a specific day in the year. So that begs the question, when? If his commandment is for a specific day, then we best know the specific day. So let's take a look at what the text says, because that's what we always like to do. We like to make sure that we're going with what the text says, not our own interpretation. So it says, Leviticus 23, it says, "You yourselves will observe from the day following the Sabbath, from the day on which you present the sheaf on the elevated offering, 7 full weeks. Up to the next day after the last week, you will calculate 50 days. And you will present a newly harvested offering to Yahweh." So in Leviticus, it says we are to count 7 full weeks. 7 times 7 would be 49, and then we do the day after that, which would make it 50. And of course, the 50 days would be the more commonly known of this feast day, which is Pentecost. Penta, 50, cost, count. So you count 50. Again, in Deuteronomy, it says the same thing. 7 weeks you shall count for yourself. When you have begun the sickle upon the harvest, you shall begin to count 7 weeks. So we are to count 7 weeks. Let's see what else it says. So what month are we supposed to do this, that we count 7 weeks? In Jubilee 6, it says, "And on the new moon of the 3rd month, he went forth from the ark and built an altar of the mount on the mountain. So that's the third month. Jubilee 6 also says, and do thou command the children of Israel to observe the festival in all their generations for a commandment unto them, one day in the year in this month they shall celebrate the festival. So we go back up to Jubilee 6:1 and it says third month. So one day in the third month of this year we shall celebrate the festival. And then in Exodus 19, it also says, and in the third month, after the exit of the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt, on this day they arrived in the wilderness in Sinai. And that actually goes on to talk about when they observed Shavuot, and they observed what you're supposed to do on Shavuot, and it was in the third month in Exodus. So we have the third month, we got to count 50 days. So 50 days, we're somehow getting into the third month. Starting to narrow it down. So what day in the month? How do we know what day? Again, Jubilees, one of the great things about Jubilees is the book has very detailed dates. It gives you years, it gives you specific days, it gives you months. And so it's really good about keeping those little details. And so oftentimes what we can take, what we find in the canon, and then we find those specific details in Jubilees, and that's really where we see this. In Jubilees 15, it says, and in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about this. I meant to make mention. In Jubilee 6:1, it says, and on the new moon of the 3rd month. The new moon is often just talking about the first day. It's the new month. And now we've translated it to new moon because moon and month tend to go together, but it really is just the first day. It's not, we're not watching for the new moon and then figure out that that's when this starts. And we can see that in the text. There's oftentimes that even in our Masoretic text, it will translate it as new moon, but you look at the words and it says first day. So literally they just like, we're going to call this new moon, but it actually says first day. So that's on the first day of the month is when Noah went out forth from the ark, and then later on in that month is when they celebrated the festival. Sorry, I meant to go over that. So in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, Abram celebrated the feast of the first fruits and the grain harvest. Remember, Leviticus or Deuteronomy tells us that it is a twofold feast. It is first fruits and Shavuot together. And so it says in the middle of the month, they celebrated the first fruits. And in Jubilee 16, it says, and she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time in which Yahweh had spoken to Abraham, on the festival of the first fruits of the harvest, Isaac was born. So now we've got in the middle of the 3rd month. But we still don't know what day. So we've got to somehow count 50 and get to the middle of the 3rd month. Let's continue to look at the text. Again, in Jubilees 44, it says, and Israel took his journey, so Jacob, from Haran from his house on the new moon of the 3rd month, and he went on the way to the well of the oath. And he offered a sacrifice to God of his father, Isaac, on the 7th of this month. And Jacob remembered the dream that he had seen at Bethel, and he feared to go down into Egypt. And while he was thinking of sending word to Joseph to come to him, and he would not go down, he remained there 7 days, if perchance he should see a vision as to whether he should remain or go down. So we have this story here of, this is actually after Jacob finds out that Joseph is alive in Egypt, but he's determining whether he should go down or not to go see him. And so on the beginning of the month, again, the new moon of the 1st month, which is the first day, he has 7 days, and then he has a dream, and then he waits another 7 days. So now we're at 14 days into the month. And it continues, and he celebrated the harvest of the festival and the first fruits with old grain, for in all the land of Canaan there was not a handful of seed in the land. For the famine was over all the beasts and cattle and the birds, and also over man. Remember, the context of why Joseph was in Egypt was he was preparing for the famine. He was gathering all the food and everything to make sure everybody could last. So there's a famine going on. He couldn't use the new grain. He had to use the old grain. And on the 16th, Yahweh appeared unto him and said unto him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said unto him, I am God of the fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make of thee a great nation. So he had the festival, and then he had the 16th. So that brings us to the 15th. So if it's 2 weeks and then we have the festival and then it's the 16th, that means the festival was on the 15th. And what's really interesting is there is a fragment in the Dead Sea Scrolls that was found in the Qumran caves. And I'm not saying this fragment is necessarily truth. I'm not debating that. But it's very interesting that that fragment actually says on the 7th day of the 3rd month is a Sabbath. On the 14th day of the 3rd month is a Sabbath. On the 15th of the 3rd month is the Festival of Weeks. That's Shavuot. So see how that all coincides? It gets down to the 15th day of the 3rd month. So let's break it all down. Does it actually work out? Can you count 50 from the Sabbath after unleavened bread, after Passover, and get to the 15th of the 3rd month? Remember, we're looking at the months as far as the biblical calendar, the 364-day calendar. We're not looking at January, February, March. We're not talking March. We're talking the 3rd month of the biblical year. So you see on the 1st month, on the 14th, on the evening of the 14th would be the Passover. On the 15th, and then the 14th through the 21st would be unleavened bread. And then there's the Sabbath on the 25th there, and that's when we start the count. The day after the Sabbath, which would be the Sunday, the 26th. So if we start counting that day, and we move through the calendar, so the count beginning on the day after the weekly Sabbath, following the unleavened bread, that's from Leviticus 23. And then from the 26th of the 1st month, count 7 Sabbaths. So count 7 Sabbaths. 1, the 2nd of the month 2, 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30, 7th, 14th of month 3. That's 7 Sabbaths. The 50th day is the day after the 7th Sabbath. This is all from Leviticus. And the 15th day of the 3rd month is a holy convocation. Leviticus 23:21, on the same day you shall make a proclamation as well. You are to have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. It is to be a perpetual statute in your dwelling places throughout your generations. So you see that the math actually lines up. It gets us exactly to the middle of the month, to the 15th. We start the count the Sunday after the Sabbath after the end of unleavened bread. So we've got the unleavened bread. We got the Sabbath on the 25th of the 1st month, and then we start the count. And you can see, count up to 50, it matches. You can see that if we count 7 Sabbaths, it matches. And it's in the middle of the month. It's actually in the dead middle of the month. The 30 days in the month, 15th is the dead middle. So it all lines up. So from my understanding, from my study, when we do Shavuot is the 15th day of the 3rd month, which in a solar 364-day calendar lines up like this, and that's where we are today. That's why we're here today. So, how do we observe it? Now that we know when, how do we observe it? Leviticus 23:21 says, and you will convene an assembly this day, and it will be holy to you. Numbers 28:26 says, and on the day of the first fruits, when you are bringing a new sacrifice to Yahweh during the Festival of Weeks, there will be a holy assembly for you. So how do we observe it? First of all, we gather together. Here we are. Thank you for gathering together in obedience to the Father. How else do we observe it? And you will convene an assembly this day. It will be holy to you. You will not perform any common labor in it. A perpetual law throughout your generations and all your settlements. Numbers 28, again, and on the day of the first fruits, whenever you are bringing a new sacrifice to Yahweh during the festival of weeks, there will be a holy assembly for you, and you will not do any common labor. So how do we observe it? It's a Sabbath day. We treat it like a Sabbath. We don't do any work. We follow all the rules of the Sabbath. We gather together. How else do we observe this day? Exodus 19:7 says, and Moses came and said to the elders of the people and set before them all these words which God commanded him. And all the people answered with one accord and said, we will do everything that God said. We will listen. Then Moses reported these words to God. In Exodus 24, and Moses went and reported in detail the people all the words of God and the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice, saying, we will do all the words that Yahweh said, and we will obey. And then if we go to Joshua, whoops, wrong button. Yeah. Then if we go to Joshua, it says, then Joshua built an altar to Yahweh, the God of Israel, on the mountain of Ebal, as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the law of Moses, an altar of unhewn stones upon which an iron tool is not struck. And he sent up a sacrifice there, an offering of deliverance to Yahweh. And Joshua wrote upon the stones, repeated the law of Moses before the sons of Israel. And all of Israel and their elders and the judges and their scribes passed by on one side and on another opposite of the ark. And the priests and the Levites carried the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, both the sojourner and the native, half of whom were near Mount Gerizim and half of whom were near Mount Ebal, as commanded Moses, the servant of Yahweh, to bless the people in the beginning. And after these things, thus Joshua read aloud the word of this law, the blessings and the curses, according to all the things written in the law of Moses. There was no word from all the things that Moses commanded Joshua that Joshua did not read aloud into the ears of the assembly of the sons of Israel, to the men, women, children, and sojourners who attached themselves to Israel. So part of Shavuot is to read the blessings, the law, and the curses. We're to read it aloud. Also to offer leavened bread. It specifically says leavened bread. Leviticus 23, prepare a single he-goat from the goats for a sin offering, and 2 lambs a year old for an offering of peace, with the loaves of the first fruits. And the priest will place them with the loaves of first fruits as an elevated offering in the presence of Yahweh with the 2 lambs. They will be holy things to Yahweh. They will belong to the priest who offers them to him. I can't remember if I had another verse. I don't. So that is why we have our elevated offering. That's our first fruits offering, our leavened bread that we've put there, and then the berries and grapes that we had from our backyard. And specifically, it says in another verse, it says that they are not to be a burnt offering. So this isn't one that you throw on the altar and burn up to him. It's actually to be eaten. It's actually to be given to the Levites to be eaten during the festival. It's part of how they feed them. They bring in the first fruits, they bring in the bread, and the Levites get to eat. And the lambs and stuff. So that's why we have our elevated offering. And the other thing, which I won't go into right now, but just a word for thought, the difference between Masoretic and Septuagint. Masoretic calls it a wave offering. But the word, in the Septuagint, the word is literally just a lifted up offering. So we don't have to go around and wave it. We just want to set it up for the Father, lift it up to him. Which makes more sense when you start talking about like the beef shoulder. That would be really hard to wave around and messy. It's just an elevated offering. The last thing that we do to observe, we renew the covenant. Again, this is found specifically in Jubilee 6, but we see it in Joshua, we see it in Exodus. But the commandment is found in Jubilee 6, in Jubilee 6, 15 through 18. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. And he set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years, and Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years, till the days of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham, and they ate blood. That's part of the curse, that if you don't obey the words of the Father, you always end up eating blood. It's in there a lot. But it's to say we celebrate the Feast of Weeks to renew the covenant every year. That's one of the reasons what the Feast of Weeks is for, is to renew the covenant with him. And we're actually going to do that. That's my plan today, is to give you an opportunity to renew the covenant. So what's the last thing that we do? We get to celebrate. Because the Father loves to celebrate. The Father loves to praise. The Father loves for us to have a great time doing his will. So Deuteronomy 16:10, and you shall make a feast of weeks to Yahweh your God, as your hand is able, and all that he may give Yahweh your God, and you shall rejoice before your God. And your son and your daughter and your servant and your female servant and the Levites and the sojourner and the orphan and the widow who dwells among you in the place that Yahweh your God may choose his name to be invoked in that place. And you remember that you were a household slave in the land of Egypt, and you should be mindful to do these commandments. So remember, there were 3 feasts where they had to go back up to Jerusalem, where the place where Yahweh dwells. And that was Passover, that was Shavuot, and Sukkot. 3 times a year you had to present yourself. The males had to present themselves before Yahweh. Oh, yeah. And one of the reasons here is because they would go and renew the covenant. That's why they would go during Shavuot. Now, we don't have a temple in Jerusalem. That's not the place where Yahweh dwells now. The place where Yahweh dwells is up in his heavenly throne room. So we'll do the best, and we gather together here because that's the best that we can do. We can't go up there to him. We can't make it. So this is the best we can do, to gather together, to present ourselves before him, to renew the covenant. So that's actually what I'd like to do today. It's kind of like an altar call, but not really the same thing, because we've talked about endurance and things like that in the last few weeks. And so part of that endurance is renewing our commitment to the Father. And so I'd like to have Elijah. He's going to read some passages in Exodus, just like we're commanded to do, to read the law and the blessings and the curses. And then after we're done, I would like us to take some time to separate as families, because I don't want to do it as a group here. I don't think that works in this sense. But separate as families, and if you choose to, renew the covenant with the Father. So let's go ahead and listen to the words of the law.
And in the 3rd month after the exit of the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt, on this day they arrived in the wilderness of Sinai. They departed from Rephidim, and they came into the wilderness of Sinai, and Israel encamped there right before the mountain. Now Moses went up to the mountain of Yahweh, and God summoned him from the heavens, saying, "This is what you shall do. You shall say to the house of Jacob and report to the sons of Israel. You yourselves have seen the things that I have done to the Egyptians, and I have brought you up as if on wings of eagles. And I have led you to myself. And now if you listen with hearing to my voice and keep my covenant, you will be my special people of all the nations, for all the earth is mine. And you yourselves will be a royal priesthood to me, and a holy nation. These are the words you shall say to the sons of Israel." And Moses came and said to the elders of the people, and set before them all these words, which Yahweh commanded him. And all the people answered with one accord, and said, "We will do everything that Yahweh said, and we will listen." Then Moses reported these words to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Look, I myself will come to you in a pillar of cloud, so that the people may hear my speaking to you, and they will trust in you forever." And Moses announced the words of the people to Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Go down, warn the people, and make them holy today and tomorrow, and have them wash their garments, and have them be prepared for the 3rd day. For on the 3rd day Yahweh will come down on Mount Sinai in the presence of all the people. You will designate boundaries all around for the people, saying, 'As for you, be mindful of going up the mountain and touching any part of it. Anyone who touches the mountain will die by death. No hand will touch him, but he will be stoned by stones, or he will be shot through with an arrow. Whether an animal or human, he will not live. When the thunders and the trumpets and the cloud depart from the mountain, those will go up to the mountain.' And Moses came down from the mountain to all the people, and made them holy, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, 'Become prepared for 3 days, do not go near one.' And it happened on the 3rd day, as it was getting toward dawn, thunder and lightning and a dense cloud came upon Mount Sinai. The sound of a trumpet sounded forth strongly, and all the people who were in the encampment were terrified. Moses led the people out from the encampment to meet God, and they took their stand by Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai billowed with smoke all over, because Yahweh had descended upon it in fire. and its smoke went up like a smoke of a furnace, and all the people were very astonished. And the sounds of the trumpet were growing very much stronger. Moses spoke, and Yahweh responded to him with a voice. And then Yahweh came down upon Mount Sinai, upon the top of the mountain. And Yahweh called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And God spoke to Moses, saying, Go down, warn the people in case they come near to Yahweh to observe, and a multitude of them die. And have the priests who draw near to Yahweh God hallow themselves, lest Yahweh remove some of them. And Moses spoke to God. The people are not able to go up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself informed us, saying, Set boundaries for the mountain and make it holy. Then Yahweh said to him, Go down, and come back up, you and Aaron with you, but the priests and the people should not strive to come up to God, in case Yahweh destroys some of them. And Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. 20. And Yahweh spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods except me. You shall make for yourself no idol or likeness of anything in the heavens above, and in the land below, and in the waters under the land. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, Yahweh your God, am a jealous God, repaying the sin of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation for those who hate me, and showing mercy to thousands for those who love and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. For the Lord your God will not acquit the one who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to make it holy. 6 days you shall work and do all your work. On the seventh day there is a Sabbath to Yahweh your God. You shall not perform any labor on it. You or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your maid servant, your ox and your beast of burden, and any animal yours, not even a sojourner who is sojourning among you. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth and everything in them, and he rested on the seventh. Because of this, Yahweh blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that it may be well for you, so that you may be long-lived upon the good land that Yahweh your God is giving you. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not murder. You shall not testify falsely against your neighbor with a false testimony. You shall not desire the wife of your neighbor. You shall not desire the house of your neighbor, or his field, or his male servant, or his maid, or his female servant, or his ox, his beast of burden, or any animal of his, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And all the people were seeing the thunder and the lightning, and the sound of the trumpet and the smoking mountain. And all the people stood back terrified at a distance. And they said to Moses, You yourself speak to us. Do not let God speak to us, so we do not die. And Moses said to them, Take courage, for Yahweh has come to you to test you, in order that his fear may be among you, so that you do not sin. The people stood at a distance, and Moses entered into the thick cloud where God was. Yahweh said to Moses, This is what you shall say to the house of Jacob and announce to the sons of Israel. You yourselves have seen that I have spoken with you from the heavens. You shall not make for yourselves gods of silver, and you shall not make for yourselves gods of gold. You shall make an altar of earth for me, and upon it you shall sacrifice your whole burnt offerings, and your peace offerings, and your sheep, and your young bulls, in every location where I place my name. And I will be there with you, and I will bless you. And if you make an altar for me out of stones, you shall not construct them using dressed stones, for you have used your hand tool on them, and they are defiled. You shall not go up to my altar by steps, so that you will not uncover your shame upon it. Now these are the ordinances, 21. Now these are the ordinances that you will set before them. Whenever you acquire a Hebrew servant, he will serve you 6 years. But in the 7th year, he will go out a free man for nothing. If he comes in alone, then also he will go out alone. But if a wife comes in with him, his wife also will go out with him. But if the master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, his wife and his children will belong to his master, and he himself will go out alone. But if the male servant says in reply, I have come to love my master and my wife and my children, I do not want to depart a free man. Then his master will bring him to the place of Yahweh's judgment, and will bring him up to the doorpost. And his master will pierce his ear with an awl, and he will serve him forever. But whenever a person sells his own daughter as a household slave, she will not go out as the slaves go free. If she is not pleasing to her master, who designated her for himself, he will release her on a payment of a ransom. But her master is not to sell her to a foreign nation, because he rejected her. And if he designates her for his son, he will deal with her according to the ordinance of daughters. And if he takes a different woman, he will not decrease her needful things and clothing and conjugal rights. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she will go forth freely without children. And if someone strikes someone else, and he indeed dies, let him be put to death by death. As for the unwilling person, instead God delivered him into his hands. I will grant you a place where the killer will flee. And if someone attacks his neighbor to kill him treacherously and he flees, you shall take him from my altar to be put to death. The one who strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death by death. The one who verbally abuses his father or his mother will be sentenced to death. Whoever kidnaps any one of the sons of Israel and oppresses and sells him, and he is discovered with him, have him sentenced to death. And if 2 men angrily confront each other, and one strikes the neighbor with a stone or with a fist, he does not die, but is confined to his bed. If, when he gets up, the person walks around outside on a staff, the one who struck him shall be innocent, except that he shall pay for his unemployment and his medical expenses. And if someone strikes his male servant or his female servant with a staff, and he dies at his hands, he shall be penalized with a penalty. But if he survives 1 day or 2, he shall not be penalized, but the silver for the silver is his. And if 2 men are fighting, and they strike a pregnant woman, and her child comes out unformed, he shall suffer a financial penalty, according to whatever the husband of the woman may impose. He shall pay with a judicial assessment. But if her child was formed, he shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. And if someone strikes the eye of his male servant or the eye of his female servant and blinds them, he shall send them out free in place of their eye. And if he knocks out a tooth of the male servant or a tooth of the female servant, he shall send them out free in place of their tooth. And if an ox gores a man or a woman, and the person dies, the ox shall be stoned with stones, and its flesh will not be eaten. For the owner of the ox shall be free from liability. But if the ox was one that would gore in the recent past and in the distant past, and they warned its owner but did not destroy it, and it slays a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner will die with it. But if a ransom price is placed upon him, he shall pay the ransom price for his life, whatever price they placed upon him. And if it gores a son or daughter, they shall deal with him according to this ordinance. And if the ox gores a male servant or a female servant, he shall pay 30 drachmas of silver to their owner, and the ox shall be stoned. And if someone leaves a pit opened, or digs it out, and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall pay out silver. He will pay their owner, but the dead animal will be his. And if some ox of someone gores the ox of a neighbor so that it dies, they shall sell the living ox, and they will divide up its silver, and they will divide up the dead ox. But if it was pointed out that the ox was a gorer in the recent past or in the distant past, the owner was warned and did not destroy it. He shall pay ox for ox, but the dead ox will be his. 22. And if someone steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 oxen in place of the ox, and 4 sheep in place of the sheep. And if the thief is discovered while breaking into the house, and after being smitten he dies, it is not a murder to him. But if his son has risen on him, he is guilty. He shall be killed in return. And if the thief has no means, have him be sold to cover his theft. And if he is seized, and the stolen thing, whether a donkey or a sheep, is discovered in his hands alive, he shall repay them double. And if a person puts a flock out to graze in a field or a vineyard and lets his livestock loose to graze in another's field, he shall make compensation from his field according to his own produce. And if he causes his flock to feed upon the whole field, he shall make compensation from the very best of his field and the very best of his vineyard. And if a fire breaks out and finds thorny plants and ignites a threshing floor or stacked grain or a field, the one who lit the fire shall give compensation. And if a person gives his neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping, and it is stolen from the house of that person, if the thief is found, he shall repay double. And if the thief is not found, the owner of the house shall come forward into the presence of God, and he shall swear whether or not he himself indeed acted wickedly concerning any part of the goods of his neighbor, according to every trespass mentioned, whether for calf, beast of burden, sheep, garment, or any lost thing of which one is accused, whatever then it might be. The judgment of both parties will come before Yahweh, and the one condemned through Yahweh will put twofold back to the neighbor. And when a person gives his neighbor a beast of burden, or a young bull, or a sheep, or any animal to keep, and it becomes injured or dies, or it becomes captured and no one notices, an oath will be sworn to Yahweh between the two persons, whether indeed he did not act maliciously at all, with the deposit entrusted to the care of his neighbor, and thus its owner shall accept and not make payment. But if it is stolen from him, the other shall make payment to its owner. But if it was mauled by wild beast, he shall bring him to the prey, and the other shall not make payment. And when someone requests something from his neighbor, and it is injured, or dies, or is stolen, and the owner was not with it, the other shall make payment. But if the owner was with it, the other shall make payment, but not if he was a hired servant. It will be his for his wages. And if a certain man seduces a not yet betrothed virgin and sleeps with her, he shall pay a bridal price for her with a dowry as his wife. But if her father refuses with a refusal and is unwilling to give her to him as a wife, he shall pay out silver to her father according to whatever is the bridal price of virgins. You shall not procure sorcerers. Anyone who lies with an animal, you shall kill them by death. The one who sacrifices to God shall be destroyed by death, except Yahweh alone. And you shall not afflict a stranger, and certainly not oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not afflict any widow or orphan, and if you afflict them with affliction, and they call out and cry out to me, I will listen to their voice with hearing. And I will become wrathful with anger, and I will kill you with a sword, and your women will become widows, and your children orphans. And if you lend silver to your poor brother among you, and you shall not keep pressuring him, you shall not charge him interest. And if you take the garment of your neighbor as a pledge, you will give it back to him before sunset, for this is his only covering. This is the garment covering his shame. What will he sleep in? So if he cries out to me, I will listen to him, for I am compassionate. You shall not verbally abuse gods, and you shall not speak badly of the rulers of your people. You shall not fall short regarding the first fruits from the threshing floor and your winepress. You shall give me the firstborn of your sons. Do this with respect to your ox and your sheep and your beast of burden. For 7 days it shall be with its mother, but on the 8th day you shall give it to me. And you shall be holy men, to me, and you shall not eat flesh mauled by wild beasts. You shall throw it to the dog. 23. You shall not accept a pointless report. You shall not agree with the person in the wrong and become an unjust witness. You shall not be in the company of the majority in evil things. You shall not proceed with the multitude to turn aside along with the majority, so as to derail a judgment. And you shall not show mercy to a poor man in rendering a judgment. And when you come upon the ox of your enemy, or his beast of burden, as they are wandering about, you shall turn it back and return it to him. And if you see the beast of burden of your enemy fallen under its load, you shall not pass it by. Instead, share the burden with him. You shall not distort judgment of a poor man in his dispute. You shall keep away from any unjust word. You shall not execute the innocent and the righteous. You shall not justify the godless person for the sake of a gift, and you shall not take a gift. For indeed gifts blind the eyes of those who see and corrupt righteous words. And you shall not oppress a stranger, for you yourselves have known the life of the stranger, for you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt. For 6 years you shall sow your land and harvest its produce. But in the seventh year you shall perform a release and leave it unplowed, and your needy people will eat, and the wild animals will eat the remainder. So you shall do with respect to your vineyard and your olive grove. For 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day there is a time of rest, so that your ox and your beast of burden may rest, so that the son of your female slave and the sojourner may rest. You shall observe all the things that I have said to you, and you shall not bring the name of other gods to mind. It will not even be heard coming out of your mouth. 3 times during the year you shall celebrate a festival to me. You shall take care to observe the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, just as I commanded you, according to the appointed time of the mouth of the month of new corn. For in that month you came out of Egypt. You shall not appear before me empty-handed. And you shall observe the festival of harvest of the first fruits of your labors, which you sowed in your field, and the festival of completion at the exit of the year, at the assembly of your works that are from your field. 3 times during the year every male from among you shall appear before Yahweh your God. For whenever I cast out peoples from your presence and I extend your borders, you shall not present the blood of my incense upon leaven. And certainly the fat of my feast shall not remain overnight until morning. You shall carry the firstfruits of your first produce into the house of Yahweh your God. You shall not boil a kid in the milk of its mother. And look, I myself am sending out my angel before your face, so that he may watch over you along the way, in order that he may guide you to the land that I have prepared for you. Be mindful of yourself and listen to him, and do not disobey him, for he will certainly not put up with you, for my name is on him. If you listen with hearing to my voice, and you do all the things that I command you and keep my covenant, you will be a people special to me from among all the peoples. For all the earth is mine, but you yourself will be a royal priesthood to me and a holy nation. You will say these words to the sons of Israel. If you listen with hearing to my voice and do everything that I say to you, I will be an enemy to your enemies, and I will be an adversary to those hostile to you. For my angel will go and lead you, and he will bring you to the Amorite and Hittite, and Perizzite and Canaanite, and Girgashite and Hivite and Jebusite, and I will destroy them. You shall not bow down to their gods, and you will certainly not serve them. You shall not act in accordance with their actions. Rather, with taking down you shall take down, and with shattering shatter their sacred pillars. And you shall worship Yahweh your God, and I will bless your food and your wine and your water, and I will turn disease away from you. There will be no woman who miscarries or a barren woman in your land. I will bring the number of your days to completion, and I will send my fear forth to lead you. And I will amaze all the nations into which you are going into them, and I will make all your enemies into fugitives. And I will send my hornets out ahead of you, and drive out the Amorites and Hivites and Canaanites and the Hittites from you. I will not drive them out in 1 year, so that the land will not become desolate, and the wild animals of the land become numerous against you. Little by little I will expel them from your presence until you increase in number, and you will inherit the land. And I will establish your boundaries from the Red Sea up to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness up to the great river Euphrates. And I will deliver the dwellers in the land into your hands, and I will cast them from you. You will not establish a covenant with them and with their gods, and you will not live in your and they will not live in your land, so that they do not make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, these will become a pitfall for you. 24. And he said to Moses, come up to Yahweh, you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they will worship Yahweh from a distance. And Moses alone will draw near to God, and they will not draw near. The people will not come up with them. And Moses went and reported in detail to the people all the words of Yahweh and the ordinances. All the people answered with one voice, saying, we will do all the words that Yahweh said, and we will obey.
Thank you, Elijah, for reading that. Obviously, there's a lot more words of his law. There's a lot more words of how we're supposed to obey and how we're supposed to walk. But I wanted to read just a little bit, even though that was 5 chapters. Just a little bit of what he commands us to do. And I want us to think about that because I think it's no coincidence that the last 4 or 5 weeks of what we have been studying here. And it's been all about that it's not about my will, but it's his. It's been all about how important the Sabbath is and to set it apart for him, not for our own desires or our own hobbies or our own leisures, but to set aside the Sabbath. That it's so important for us to stand up for his word and stand up in the face of persecution, in the face of being ridiculed and being attacked and having things stolen, to stand up for his ways. That it's so important to endure, that it's not a one-time thing, that we have to endure until either he comes or we end up in Sheol. We have to endure. It's not a coincidence that we talked about that the desire is not to be rebellious, so to become a servant, which is that word slave, to Yahweh. He is our master. He is the one we obey. We don't get a choice. If we are willing to serve him, he is our master. And it brought us to the idea that it all comes down to the fear. We don't have a fear of Yahweh anymore, it seems. We were taught that fear was wrong. We shouldn't fear God, that we should be reverent. We should be reverent to him. But it says, fear him who can kill body and soul in Gehenna, in the lake of fire. That we are to fear Yahweh, because that is the beginning of wisdom, is to fear him. So I don't think it's any coincidence that the Father brought us to this point, to bring us to the time of renewing the covenant. I also don't think it's any coincidence that this happens to be the month that they talk about the rainbow. But this is the month that the Father put the rainbow in heaven to show us his covenant with us, that he would never destroy us like that again. To remember the covenant that we have with him, the promise that he's going to come back again. That if we are obedient and we have faith in Yeshua, faith in our Elohim that he has given to us, then we will get to see the promises. So this is what I would like us to do, because this is what we're commanded to do. Once a year, on this day, we are to renew the covenant. And I think it's interesting that the males are the ones that showed up every time of the year, because we have this verse in Joshua, something that's rang true in my mind for many years, even before I even put the word Yahweh in it. And in that passage, it talks about that they are going to serve after other gods, and you're going to go into the land, and there's going to be all these things that you can do, and you have to make a choice. Choose life or death. And as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. I don't care what that means. I don't care if we have 2 people here or 20 people. I don't care if the neighbors throw fruit at our windows. As for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh and all that he commands. And that's what I'd like us to do. Break up as your families. And if you're willing, pray to him as the head of your household. Pray for your household. The wives, pray for yourselves and for your kids. Dedicate your year coming, your life, your very existence, as we read about in Ecclesiastes 12. It's not the duty of man, it is the being of mankind to fear God and keep his commandments. So if you would, that's what I'd like to do. Let's split up and renew the covenant with our Heavenly Father, the Most High, the creator of this world, that loves us so much that he sent his only Son to become our high priest, to mediate the new covenant, that we would be resurrected one day with a perfect heart and a perfect mind, with the law written on it, so that we would never sin against him again. That's the covenant we're renewing. But you've got to say, I will hear. I'm not saying you have to say these exact words. It's not a mantra or a spell. But you have to say the idea of I will hear and I will obey what you say. So let's go ahead and split up. For those of you on the live, I encourage you to do the same. We'll be back on in a couple of minutes to finish out and pray and close. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and pray. I want to say first, I meant to say this earlier, that I wanted to thank my son Riker for putting all these slides together for me. I put the text together and he put all the pictures in this week, so I appreciate that. I thought they looked really good. So thank you for doing that. Let's go ahead and pray. Thank you everybody for joining us today, that we get to gather together as his people to renew his covenant. Father Most High, you are our Lord. You are our Master. You are our God. We only want to serve you. I thank you so much that in your wisdom and your design, that one of the feast days is to renew our time with you. That now that we have renewed the covenant to be obedient in what it is we are to do and not do, and to have a heart set apart to follow you fully, that now we get to rejoice and now we get to celebrate together. Just like you lay out the blessings, Father, for when we walk in obedience to you. Would you bless all these people here? Would you give them encouragement? Would you give them strength? Would you give them endurance to stand, to be an example of you, even when it's so different from everybody else, even when it's so different from this world? Father, call us to be set apart from this world, to renew our wisdom in you, renew the wisdom that comes from you, not from this world. And Father, forgive us when we get distracted. Forgive us when we get complacent, when we choose the wisdom of the world, the success, the pleasures, the joy of the world over you. Help us to return to you. Father, bless everyone here. Send your angels to guard and protect them. Help us to be a light to others, to be an example, to bring glory and honor to your name, to walk in the footsteps of your Son, our high priest, Yeshua. It is his name and his authority as our high priest we ask these things of you. Hallelujah, Father. Amen. Thank you for those of you who joined us. I appreciate it. Hope it was worthwhile for you. We look forward to seeing you next Sabbath. You have a great week.